and greetings, dear friends. A number of Christians and a number of conservatives, some of whom are evangelical Christians, some are not, have become quite concerned about certain tendencies on the political right towards anti-Zionism, even anti-Semitism and Jew hatred. This has captivated much of the media, but it's disturbed many people who had always looked up to some of the people who've gone in this direction. Now, let me point out that what you see happening with people like Candace Owen and Tucker Carlson and other figures is not an entirely new phenomenon. It began some time ago, and it's existed for some time, with Pat Buchanan and his own political camp. He was a figure in two Republican administrations that were rhino. They were not really conservative, but they were rhino. And they were both saturated in scandal and corruption. He was in the middle of the Watergate mess in the communications office of the White House during the Nixon era. And of course, the Reagan administration, with the scandals and the indictments of Edwin Meese and of Mr. McFarland and of Oliver North and these other people, it was quite ugly. But he was always someone who came from the political right, or at least said he was political right. It can be argued whether or not he was a conservative or a rhino, but he always had a strong bias against Israel. And like Candace Owen, this seems to be linked somehow to his Roman Catholicism, which has always had a history of anti-Semitism. No matter what the Roman Catholic Church likes to say, Adolf Hitler came to power in Germany with the backing of the Centrum, led by papal Privy Chamberlain Hans von Papen. That's how Hitler came to power, with the backing of the Roman Catholic Centrum Party of Bavaria under Hans von Papen, the Privy Chamberlain to the Pope. He would have been sentenced at Nuremberg, but Pope Pius XII intervened and saved his neck, and he was only given 8 years in prison. But he was the coalition partner with Hitler. Again, the Catholic Church was closely associated with Franco's Spain, with the Peronist Argentina, and with Mussolini's Italy. Nobody can deny the relationship between fascism and Roman Catholicism. This is not to say that all Roman Catholics were that, or that all Roman Catholics were anti-Semitic. They were not. And it's not to suggest that there were not Protestant anti-Semites. There certainly were, including Martin Luther himself, the primary founder of Lutheran Protestantism. Nonetheless, Pat Buchanan had always had that bias, that anti-Israel bias, that attitude towards the Jews. When he tried to run for president, a member of his campaign team used phrases like Talmudic filth. Now, I don't believe in the Talmud, but the hostility with which he voiced it was an attack on Jewish people. It is not new. You always had the Pat Buchanan thing in the Republican Party and among people professing to be on the political right. It's not brand new, but it has gained a new momentum. Certainly with Candace Owen, certainly with the neo-Nazi, Nick Fuentes, certainly with someone I consider to be a pseudo-academic who was interviewed by Tucker Carlson. I speak of Darryl Cooper. Tucker Carlson interviewed Vladimir Putin, a murderous dictator who invaded Ukraine. He interviewed Cooper. He interviewed the neo-Nazi Nick Fuentes. Why is he doing this? Why is he giving platform to such terrible, terrible people to lie? But he's doing it. I was not sure that Fox News made the right move when they fired Tucker Carlson. I now see why they did it. He is fake news. He is not an objective journalist. He is somebody who specializes in the art of half-truth. He tells half-truths. He's cultivated it to an art form. What he has done most recently is to say that the nation Israel is responsible for the oppression or persecution of Christians in Israel, and the United States, as the main backer of Israel, should be doing something concerning this. He says that Israel receives more military aid than any other country. Now, either he doesn't know what he's talking about or he's lying. I will take his statements on military aid first of all. The United States gives approximately $3.8 billion a year. Now, when you understand the size of the American defense budget, $3.8 million is like pennies to pounds. It's a very small amount of the overall American defense budget. But he's simply not telling the truth. Germany is geographically and demographically a much larger country than Israel, and a far wealthier country than Israel. Despite its present economic doldrums, it is the third biggest economy in the world, following the United States and China. It is bigger than Japan. The United States spends $7 to $8 billion a year in defense expenditures in Germany. Now, Germany becomes a platform to project American power beyond Germany throughout Europe and into the Middle East and Africa. That is true, but that is also true of any country the United States aligns itself with strategically. Japan has a far bigger economy than Israel. It is bigger demographically and geographically. Bigger population. The United States spends $5.3 billion a year on defense in Japan. South Korea also has a bigger economy than Israel. It is geographically bigger, and it is a country with a larger population. They receive approximately the same amount of military aid and expenditure as Israel does. So he's not telling the truth to begin with. He's simply not telling the truth. Why should Israel get more than any other country? To begin with, it doesn't. He's not being honest. But let's go further. What he's not telling you. Unlike in Germany, Japan, and South Korea, the big recipients, all of them with bigger economies, bigger populations, and bigger landmass than Israel, have American boots on the ground. You've got 30,000 American combat troops in South Korea. If there was an attack by North Korea on the South, American troops would be on the front line and others would be brought in from Okinawa and Japan very quickly, in addition to the 30,000 boots on the ground that are there. If Japan was attacked, again, the U.S. Air Force would be right at the forefront of it, as would American naval forces in the Sea of Japan and in the North Pacific. If Germany was attacked during the Cold War or now, American combat troops would be deployed. You've got these big bases in Wiesbaden and Stuttgart. You've got these bases, Ramstein, huge American bases. But he doesn't mention this. There are no American boots on the ground in Israel. If Israel is attacked, there are no American troops in harm's way. None. There are liaisons. There are civilian employees of the Pentagon or defense contractors. There's the normal military attaché staff, but America has no boots on the ground in Israel as it does in Germany or South Korea or Japan. There's no American lives in harm's way if Israel's attacked. No American military lives. He's not telling you that. He's not being honest. He's telling you a half-truth. The second thing he's not telling you is that $3.8 billion of annual aid giving to Israel essentially never leaves the United States. It's all repatriated back to the United States. It can only be used to purchase military hardware from Northrop Grumman, from McDonnell Douglas, from Raytheon. The money is spent in the United States. It goes into the coffers of American defense contractors. The money that goes to Germany is a one-way expenditure, most of it. The money that goes to Japan is a one-way expenditure. The money that goes to South Korea is a one-way expenditure. It is estimated that American military expenditures just in Bavaria, just around Munich and in southern Germany, contribute $1 billion a year to the German economy, just of Bavaria. With Israel, not so. All of that money is repatriated back to the United States. It buys American military hardware. The money never leaves America. It's a purely paper transaction. What else he doesn't tell you is, going back to the Cold War and to the present hour of the present day, Israel has been the test laboratory for American weapons against the weapons of the former Soviet Union, of Russia, of Iran, of China. I recall during the closing decades of the Cold War, whenever American F-15s or F-16s got into a dogfight over Lebanon or Syria, with the Syrian Air Force flying Soviet MiG jets, the Israeli pilots would be debriefed by the U.S. Air Force, by the Pentagon, and by McDonnell Douglas. They would be debriefed. America improved its designs and its combat competitiveness against Russian aircraft and other hardware by using Israel as a laboratory to test its weapon systems in a hostile environment, giving America a strategic advantage it wouldn't have if it was not using Israeli pilots to fly those planes against Russian-manufactured MiGs, etc. He doesn't tell you that. He doesn't tell you at the present time that it was American F-35s flown by Israeli pilots that flew over Iran and worked out how to outmaneuver the Russian S-4 and possibly S-5 anti-aircraft missile systems. How's the United States keep on top? Well, in large part by expenditure, but in large part because of its association with Israel. It is able to keep a competitive edge against the suppliers of ordnance and weapon systems that can be used against America because of Israel. No other country in the world can provide that advantage to the United States. Our weapon systems would not be as good as they were if we could not test them in Israel and in the Middle East using Israeli military personnel, with no risk to American military personnel, unlike what would happen if there was a war in Europe or Japan or Korea. The next thing he's not telling you is the sixth eye. Everyone in the world of intelligence knows about the five eyes: the United States, Great Britain, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. It is coordinated in Fort Meade, Maryland, on the outskirts of Washington. The NSA, the National Security Administration. At Cheltenham Spa in England is GCHQ. In Pine Bluff, Australia, near Alice Springs, it's Pine Bluff. Those are the three big ones. There are smaller ones in New Zealand and in Cyprus at two autonomous British bases in Cyprus and various other places, including Canada. But the three most important are Pine Bluff, Cheltenham Spa in England, and Fort Meade in Maryland. And there's other things at a major American base in Kansas as well. Well, what's happening here? No, there's a sixth eye. And the sixth eye is as important as Britain and as important as Australia. That sixth eye is the Israeli electronic intelligence, signal intelligence on Mount Hermon and in the Negev Desert. The intelligence sharing between the Israeli military and Mossad, and to a degree Shin Bet, their internal security service, with the American intelligence services, including and especially the NSA, but also the CIA and the DIA, have only worked to the mutual advantage of both countries. America would not have the intelligence capacity it has in terms of, even with its satellite reconnaissance, without the cooperation and partnership with Great Britain at Cheltenham Spa, without the partnership and cooperation with Australia at Pine Bluffs, and without the cooperation and participation and partnership with Israel. It is to America's advantage. The United States would be at a disadvantage. Tucker Carlson is simply not telling the truth. Forgive me, but I know of no euphemism for a liar. If somebody tells you half truth, they're telling you a half falsehood. Israel gets more aid than any other country. You've got bigger and wealthier nations where there is a bigger percentage of the Pentagon budget being spent year after year and always have been. Only in Israel, there's no American boots on the ground, no American military lives at risk. Additionally, unlike those other countries, all of the money is repatriated nearly. All of it. It's spent in the United States. It gives us a test lab no other country has. Possibly it's happening now covertly with the Ukraine, but until now, it's been Israel. That has given us the competitive edge because we were able to modify our own defense technology against Russian apparatus and Chinese apparatus using Israeli proxies in a laboratory environment, a test environment that was a real battlefield. On top of that, a level of intelligence cooperation that is as important as what America has with Britain and Australia. He's not telling you that. While I may have had second thoughts and misgivings at the time, now I know why Fox News fired him. They fired him because he is not an honest journalist and he's not an honest man. My family are Israeli Christians. המשפחה שלי הם ישראלים שמאמינים בישוע המשיח. They believe that Jesus is the Messiah. Now, Orthodox Jews don't like Jewish Christians. That's obvious. They associate Christianity with the history of anti-Semitism. They don't like Jews who believe that Jesus is the Messiah, often called Messianic Jews. And they try to use their influence in the Israeli government to create problems in certain civil functions and rites of passage and things like this. But never has a congregation of Israeli Christians, either Jewish or Arab or otherwise, ever been persecuted by the Israeli government. It has never happened. I know cases where the Israeli government and police have protected Christians. You want to hear the truth? When Hezbollah, backed by Iran, drove the Maronites, the Maronite Roman Catholics, by the way, out of Lebanon, where they've lived for centuries, for 1,000 years. They were driven out of their homes by radical Islam. The Vatican said not a word. The European Union said not a word. They turned their back on these Lebanese Roman Catholics. Who helped them? Who gave them a home? Who accepted them as refugees and gave them a passport and a new country? Israel. Israel is the only one who helped the persecuted Catholics of Lebanon. There is one Roman Catholic church left in Gaza. One. There used to be 8. Why is there only one left? Because well before October 7th, Hamas and its followers burned the other 7 to the ground. What did they do to the Baptist bookshop? What did Hamas do? The West Bank? Radical Islam is trying to take over even Nazareth. There's a conflict between the Arab Christians in Nazareth and the Muslims. But in the West Bank, it's much worse. The Christians of the West Bank are intimidated, even by the Palestinian Authority. The late Yasser Arafat told the Christian mayor of Bethlehem, I will fill you full of lead if you don't do what we tell you against the Israelis. Because he wanted to coexist in peace. And so you have these Arab Christians, some of them, pandering to radical Islam and to the Palestinian Authority out of fear. This is who Tucker Carlson gets as the spokesman for Christianity. People like that. Well, I've been from one end of the Muslim world to the other. In the Far East, I have been to Brunei. Sharia, Islamic law. You know what happens to Christians there? What about the 100,000 plus Christians murdered by Abu Sayyaf in the southern Philippines? What about the 300,000 to 400,000 Christians murdered in East Timor by Muslims? What about what happens in Pakistan almost daily to Christians? What happens to Christians in Iran? I've been to Saudi Arabia. I know what happens to Christians in Saudi Arabia. Tucker Carlson doesn't seem to even want to mention it. You have an apartheid government, a literal apartheid government, an Islamic apartheid government in Malaysia, where ethnic Chinese Malaysian students and Indian Malaysian students have to go to university in Australia or New Zealand or the United States or Canada because they can't get admissions to universities in Malaysia. The places have to go to less qualified Muslims very often. It's organized apartheid. There are people who've been arrested for becoming Christians in Malaysia and murdered in Pakistan and hung in Saudi Arabia and hung in Iran. I've been to Saudi Arabia. He talks about how he could go to church freely in Dubai. Well, I used to fly Emirates Airlines a lot. Let me tell you about the church in Dubai. Religious freedom for Christians? Islam practices dawah. They are in England, the United States, Europe, Australia, trying to convert Westerners to Islam. That is their dawah. You go to Oman, and that Oman is more benevolent, but you go to Qatar, or you go to Dubai and try to convert a Muslim to Christianity. See if you have the same freedom as a Christian in a Muslim world that Muslims have in a Judeo-Christian world. Tucker Carlson is a master of half-truth. Somebody who tells half-truths to mislead and deceive people is not a half liar, he's a whole liar. You're a liar. You hear me? Debate me in front of a camera. You are a liar, Tucker Carlson. That's what you are. That's all you are. That's all you ever have been. And I thank God Fox had the good sense to fire you. You're not a journalist. Are you being paid from the Emirates? Even moderate Arab Muslim countries, Christians have been arrested. Even in Jordan, they've been beheaded by the Muslim Brotherhood. In Egypt, do you know what's happened to Coptic Christians in Egypt? Egypt, a pro-Western Islamic country. Lebanon, even Turkey. You think it is easy being a Christian and there's religious freedom for Christians in Turkey? But let's go a little bit further south in the Middle East to Sudan. 15 years ago, 3.3 to 3.4 million Christians were murdered in Sudan by Islamic militias. And in the last 19 months, at least 160,000 have been murdered. That's the Middle East. You know what happens to Christians in Yemen? I've been to Saudi Arabia. I've been from Morocco to Malaysia I have been from one end of the Muslim world to the other. I've been to Indonesia. I know what happens to Christians in Muslim countries, even in the more tolerant ones. Christians don't have the freedom that Muslims have in the West. You're not telling the truth. You're telling a half-truth because you're a liar. As a Christian, I thank God. I thank the God of Israel, the Father of Jesus, that there's at least one country in the Middle East where Christians are not persecuted. I thank God there's one country in the Middle East where Arab Christians do not face a possible death sentence for being a Christian. I thank the God of Israel that there is at least one country in the Middle East where Christians have the religious freedom accorded by democracy. And that country is Israel. I do not rubber stamp everything Israel does. And I'm not saying that there are not injustices in Israel. There are. But nothing like what happens in the surrounding countries of the Muslim world that you are pandering to and lying on behalf of. That is the reality, Tucker Carlson. You are the master of half-truth. I applaud Fox News for having gotten rid of you. Anybody in their right mind should get rid of you. You do not tell the truth. You want to sue me? I can't stop you. You want to debate me? Oh, I relish the opportunity. Don't you know how to do anything but lie? I used to kind of respect you. But not anymore. Not in the least bit. Go ahead. Give platform to a neo-Nazi like Nick Fuentes or to Vladimir Putin. Go ahead, tell people half-truths. Tell them out-and-out lies. Fox fired you. And I only hope the people who are being bamboozled into paying attention to you now do the same thing. Fire you. Come on, Tucker, debate me. I dare you.